Hello my loves, my name is Mina. Welcome to my channel Mina Reads, and today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in August. So in August I read about 13 books and I'm excited to share them with you because a number of them became new favorites. But before we do that, I do just want to thank today's sponsor, Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online book subscription service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers discover new books that they'll love. How it works is that each month their team vets hundreds of books and provides you with a carefully curated selection of new and early release fiction so you can spend more time reading and less time researching. Also, this is a completely risk-free service, so you can skip any month at any time and you will not be charged. And Book of the Month has the best prices for new released hardcover fiction. So this month's titles include Rock, Paper, Scissors, a thriller about a couple on a remote anniversary vacation that turns eerie as this couple wonders if their relationship can stand the weight of secrets. The Love Hypothesis, a fake dating romance about a nerdy couple with the grumpy sunshine trope. I recommend this one. The Neighbor's Secret, a story about a suburban book club that finds themselves as the target of vandalisms that disturb the peace in their idyllic cul-de-sac. And Beautiful Country, a memoir about a Chinese immigrant family struggling under the shadow of the American dream. And The Sweetest Remedy, which is about a young woman who experiences an unexpected loss and goes on a soul-searching journey back to Nigeria to reconnect to her culture and her roots. Yeah, so thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Check out the link in my description below and use the code MINAREADS to get your first box for $9.99. So now to get into the books that I read in August. As I said, it was about 13 of them. A number of them were some black romance novels. I read a lot more fantasy than I usually do, and I found some new favorites. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book that I read in the month of August was Darling by Kay Ancrum. Now this was a title that I was really excited about. This is a YA thriller, Peter Pan retelling, and I don't want to say too much more so that you can, like, I don't know, read it, be surprised or whatever, but I will just say that I can't say that I love this book. Like, it was okay. I think it had some interesting commentaries, as all of Kay Ancrum's works do, but I really did not think that Wendy was a memorable protagonist. I didn't think that, like, the plot line that was in here was super interesting or compelling, and I felt like the thing that I love the most about Kay Ancrum is her writing, and how evocative it can be, and how she plays around with, like, form and stuff, and she usually writes in, like, vignettes and things like that, and I just feel like this writing style was very different from her usual, from what I was expecting from her, from like The Wicker King or from The Way of the Stars, and this was just very different from those two novels. And I have to say that I definitely prefer her other style to this one, but I think that this could be like a good book. It could be enjoyable to some, but it just wasn't like my favorite thing. I didn't hate it. It wasn't a horrible experience, but it was just a very like middle of the road moment, and I can't say that I loved it, which really makes me sad because Kay Ancrum is definitely one of my favorite authors, but it is what it is. I gave this book 3 stars. It definitely had some merit to it, and I was like vaguely entertained while I was reading it, but it wasn't great. So then I read The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this is one of my new favorite books of all time. This book is so fucking amazing, you guys. You don't even understand. So The Beautiful One is a like historical fantasy, kind of. It's pretty light on the fantasy, but it is a fantasy. We're following these characters named Nina, Valerie, and Hector, and they all are living in this city called Los Al. And basically Nina and Hector, they are both telekinetics. They meet at this like society party. It kind of has like a Regency vibe to it. So they meet during the social season at this ball, and basically Hector, he's not super impressed by Nina, but Nina, she basically fangirls about Hector because Hector is like a famous telekinetic. She's really excited to meet him, and from there she kind of is pursuing him romantically, and he decides to pursue her in turn. However, he kind of has ulterior motives, as Nina's cousin Valerie is his one true love, and he really wants Valerie back, so he's kind of using Nina as a way to get closer to Valerie again and hopefully, I don't know, win her over. I won't say too much more than that because you should just read it for yourself, but it's a very beautiful emotional journey. I love the way that Silvia Moreno Garcia writes. Her characters are so memorable to me. Nina as a protagonist, she is one of my new favorite characters of all time. Like, I just loved her so much. She was just such a pure soul, and she just made me so happy, and I loved her. I loved how earnest and expressive she was. I loved how, like, I don't know, she was just so strong as a character, and I appreciated her so much, and I came to appreciate the like romance elements that develop in this story much more than I expected, especially based on the initial premise. But this book, it was just simply phenomenal. It was so magical. I loved it, and I may or may not have read it like at least 3 times. last month because it was just that good. I really could not get the story out of my head. I love Sylvia Moreno Garcia's writing. I love the characters. I was obsessed. So after that, I read Last Night I Sang to the Monster by Benjamin Aledé Sainz, and this is a story about this young man named Zach. And essentially Zach, he's going through some things and he's currently in a rehab facility. So over the course of the story, we are going through this like emotional and mental journey of recovery with Zach because he is an alcoholic. And I love this book so much, but I will say on reread I loved it a little bit less. So I love this author's writing style. I think it's so interesting. I love the way that he plays with like language, especially like slang in this book, because our main character Zach is like 18, and so he uses all of this slang. Honestly, it's slang that I have never seen before. Like whenever something happens, he's like, oh my god, that like totally wigged me out. Like I personally have never heard anybody say that. I'm sure somebody says that somewhere in some decade, but I have never heard that. But I really like the way that he plays with like language and slang in this, because Zach uses slang to really mask a lot of the feelings that he's having, and so he uses that as a way to like never express what he's feeling. And as a result of that, he's like not healing from, you know, his traumas and his issues that he has, because he kind of refuses to confront them. So this is a story about confronting your trauma, healing from it. It's about community. There's some really amazing side characters in this, and also a beautiful like found family moment in this. I really like this. I gave this book 4 stars on reread because I did think that there were some areas where I just felt like the story wasn't quite as strong, and I felt like there were certain moments of like revelations and things like that where it just should have been like more impactful. There were certain really like pivotal emotional moments in the story where I just felt like they kind of fell a little bit flat. And I think that's just because of like the writing style that the author chose for this book. It just didn't feel strong enough to kind of like pack the sort of punch that some of the moments in the book deserved, I think. But still, overall, it was a really good book, very emotional, and I really like Zach as a character. I think about him all the time, and so that's why I had to reread this, and I'm glad I did. So after reading that, which was pretty heavy, I decided to dive into some romance. So I read the second and third book in the Them Boys series by Alexandria House. The second one is called Ja, and so Ja is about this guy Ja and this girl Trisha, and basically Trisha has a boyfriend and she starts up like this affair with Ja, and the whole book is basically about like their affair and how they're in love, but the girl Trisha, like, she just won't leave her man, kind of. And like, I will say that it was entertaining. It was sexy in some places, but I didn't like 100% love it. I just feel like the cheating plot was just kind of like, it was just stupid, especially because we know that her man is trash. Like, he ain't shit, he cheating, you know, all this type of stuff, and we already know that about him. Trisha knows that about him, so there's literally no real reason for her to be staying with him, especially if she already has somebody else that she likes. But it's just like, whatever. So you just have to like go through this whole affair experience with them, and I just didn't 100% love it, but like, it was definitely entertaining, so I gave it 3 stars. And then after that, I read the third book in that series, which is called Shu. And so Shu is about this guy Shu and this lady named Denver. So basically Shu, him and his brothers, they were raised by their father, who was this really shitty person. He abused them mentally, emotionally, physically, all that, and they're all like severely traumatized as a result of that treatment in their childhood. And basically one of the symptoms of his trauma is that Shu, he cannot sleep, so he's a severe insomniac, and every night he goes to the nursing home where his father is being cared for. So every night he stays in his father's room and he just kind of thinks and whatever. And one night he meets the CNA who's caring for his father. Her name is Denver, and they kind of just like hit it off. This is a bit of insta-lovey, but I absolutely love Shu and Denver's dynamic, because Shu is definitely, you know, like kind of a dark, broody hero. He's also a little bit, you know, off his rocker, which I kind of liked about him, but that's neither here nor there. And then Denver is definitely like this really like bright and sunny personality, and there's also like an age gap in this, which I didn't think that I liked age gaps, but I liked it in this, because I'm not exactly sure how old Shu is supposed to be, but I think he's supposed to be like 30, like in his like late 30s maybe, and then Denver is like 24, 25, something like that. So I personally like their age gap a lot. I like the way that it plays out in the story, and I thought that they were kind of the moment. Like, I really like them as a couple, and I kind of want to reread their book. I don't know. It was a fun time. It was very sexy. It was a bit emotional, and it was also a bit wild because Shu is kind of crazy, as I said. So you should definitely give this one a shot if you're looking for like a cute, fun, fast-paced novella. Okay, so after that I read Hunger by Nicole Falls. This is another black romance. So we're following these two characters named Troyan and Tyson. And Tyson is a physical trainer, and Troyan is a like well-to-do businesswoman who is one of his clients, and basically he has a crush on her, she has a crush on him, and this is a novella. It's a romance novella about them getting together, and it's mostly told from Tyson's POV, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. I don't think I've read that many romances where it's told solely from the man's point of view, so that was very interesting on Nicole Falls' like part. Very genius and iconic of her. I really like the male POV. What I will say about this one personally for me is that I can't say that the story really stood out that much. Like, I know that I had a decent time. I know that it was a fun way that I spent like an insomnia filled night, but I can't necessarily say that it was like really memorable to me. I can't say that this is a couple that's like staying with me, you know. So I don't know, like, this was a 3-star for me. It wasn't like the absolute banger that I was hoping it was going to be, especially because, okay, this is an issue that I keep having where every time I read like a physical trainer romance, I'm like, okay, yes, we're gonna get like all these moments of like sexual tension while they're doing their physical training sessions and all this type of stuff, and then we never get that. Like, the physical training aspect is just the way that they meet, but we never get to see them in the gym together, like flirting or anything like that. And I feel like for me, that's probably one of the reasons why this one was a little bit forgettable, because I feel like we don't get a lot of the build up between these characters. There's no real feelings of tension there, and there's no like getting to know you period. I don't know, it just wasn't enough for me to really feel for these characters the way I wanted to. So yeah, 3 stars. Okay, so after that I read You're My Reason by Casey Mills. This was a new to me author, so I am very excited to try more books by her. And this is about these two best friends named Ari and Vice, and basically Vice has been pining for Ari for a really long time, but he feels like he kind of can't step to her trying to be her man until he gets his life together, because he was a drug dealer and stuff like that, you know, he was in the streets, and so he's trying to get himself together so that he can be like a man that he feels like he's worthy of Ari. And so this story is just him like kind of trying to get the courage to confess his feelings for her and like move the relationship forward and all that stuff. I really like Vice. Vice was the moment. He was so sexy to me. I love the friends to lovers trope, so that was fun. I thought the dialogue in this was good. Like, I really like this author's writing style, so I can't wait to read more from this author. But what I will say, I didn't necessarily like Ari. Her chapters of the book, they just completely took me out. Like, I didn't really vibe with her that much as a character, and I felt like because I wasn't really rooting for them as a couple, like, I just kind of liked Vice as an individual, but like I wasn't necessarily rooting for them as a couple. So as a romance, I can't give it like a super high rating because I wasn't rooting for the couple that much, but like it was an entertaining read, and I definitely want to read more by this author in the future. So I gave this one also 3 stars. Not really my lucky month when it came to romances. And after that I read Surrender by Rousey Adams, and this one was definitely better than the last few I mentioned. So Surrender is about these two characters, Yara and Lennox, and basically both of them, they were friends in college, and they both have like mutual crushes on each other, and they basically make this pact that like if they're single by the time they're like 30 or something, they're gonna like go on a trip together and like have sex just to see what it would be like, because they have all this like unexplored sexual tension all throughout college, and they finally acknowledge it like the day that they graduate and move out of their like shared apartment. So it's too late at that point, and this is just them like reuniting, rekindling that flame. And this book was really fun. It was very sexy. I liked it. If you're looking for something short and spicy and sweet, then I would say check this out. Lennox, he is that guy. He's just simply that guy. When he pulled out his little bag of toys, I was just like, okay, a new book boyfriend if I ever saw one. We love to see it. And then the last romance that I read this month was Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. And let's be honest, besties, I really did not fucking like this book. I really did not like this book like almost at all. It was just, oh, it just aggravated me so much. Okay, so this book is about this girl named Bethany, and Bethany, she's a bit of a perfectionist, and she comes from this family who owns like a house flipping company. And so basically she wants to be in charge of the next house flip. Typically, like, her role in their business is she stages the homes for them to be sold, but she wants to be a part of like the remodeling process, and she wants to be in charge of that. But her family is like, no, like, we don't think you should do it, blah 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 blah. So in this book, she really wants to like branch out on her own and, you know, head her own remodeling project. So I was like, okay, good for her, you know, I'm happy for her. So she decides like, yeah, I'm gonna flip this house, etc etc. And her love interest is this guy named West, and he is on her brother's like construction team, and he volunteers to work with her because he has a crush on her, and him and her kind of have like this pigtail pulling relationship. So there's kind of like a dislike there. They're constantly like bantering with each other, teasing one another, and he decides like he wants to be on her team to help her flip his house, right? So I wanted to root for Bethany. I wanted to root for Bethany, and I wanted to care about her, but I did not, because she was so driven that she wanted to head this you know, she wanted to head this whole remodeling project. However, she didn't know how to do a single fucking thing. Like, she didn't know how to do anything involving the remodeling process. And Wes is basically the one who remodels it. Like, he's basically one who does everything. He makes all of the decisions, and I just felt like it was stupid to me that her whole plot line is how she wants to like girl boss her way through this whole home improvement bullshit, and she didn't really do anything. Like, she really relies very heavily on Wes, which I don't think is a bad thing. I don't think that needing help is a bad thing. I don't think that being ignorant about something is a bad thing. But what I don't like is that the book really doesn't focus on her like learning these new skills about how to be in charge of a house flip and how to be like a foreman and all that stuff. Like, we don't get to see her doing any of those things or acquiring any of that knowledge or skill set. So like, I'm not rooting for her. I don't give a fuck if she's successful fixing his house or not. Like, I don't care. And then it's a romance between her and Wes, and I just feel like I didn't care about her enough as a character to really vibe that much with her and Wes's relationship. Wes, he was kind of the moment. I really liked him. He had a side plot where he was trying to like get and maintain custody of his niece, and he's taking care of her, and I really liked that aspect. That was really cute. I really liked it. I do think that there were some moments between Beth and Wes that I enjoyed, but I just feel like overall the storyline irritated me, especially with this whole like home improvement thing, because it starts taking over the story where like now she's flipping the house for like a HGTV type show and all this other shit, and it's just like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm not rooting for her. I'm bored. Like, please get me out of here. So I finished it. I can't say that I loved it, but I mean, every single part of it wasn't horrible. Like, I do think that Beth and Wes, like, they had some cute scenes here and there. I think that Wes and his personal storyline, really interesting stuff. But Bethany and his whole girl boss remodeling the house shit, I really didn't give a fuck. Like, not a single solitary fuck. And so the book was just a 2-star for me. Sorry to say. I feel like, for me personally, Tessa Bailey is a very hit or miss author for me, and when it's a miss, it's a very heavy miss, because the first Tessa Bailey book that I ever read was Love Her or Lose Her, my worst book of 2020. Like, what the fuck? But then It Happened One Summer was a serve, and I really liked that book. So I'm scared, like, should I give Tessa Bailey like a 4th shot? I don't know. Let me know what your favorite Tessa Bailey book is, because I don't know, that one just really was not the moment. I did not enjoy it. I hate to say it, but it was true. Okay, so after that, I read a whole bunch of fantasy, so let's talk about those. So the first fantasy that I read was The Last Sun by K.D. Edwards, and this is an interesting concept. It's like an urban fantasy. So we're basically following this character named Rune. So Rune is Atlantean, as in like the lost city of Atlantis, like underwater. So his people are Atlanteans, and something happened to their old empire, so they have all relocated to the island of Nantucket. Why? I couldn't be sure. They've made it over. It's called New Atlantis now. So New Atlantis is kind of ruled by this group of people who all have like courts based on the tarot deck, right? So Rune, he's a part of the Sun Court, and he's like the heir to the Sun Court. However, his family were all brutally murdered prior to the story, so he is kind of not as powerful as he once was politically. So he ends up hiring himself out as like a mercenary. And in this book, he's basically been hired to locate somebody's missing son. He's looking for this missing son. Hijinks ensue, all types of magic and monsters and all that good stuff. I would say that this is a very highly entertaining read, but I gave it 3 stars because like I didn't love it. Like I really did not vibe that much with the world building, like the whole Atlantean concept. It just was like, why? Rune as a character, like he was fine, I liked him, and he has this bodyguard slash best friend named Bran. And Rune and Bran should be in a relationship, and I really do not give a fuck what the author thinks should be happening, because they need to be in a relationship. Because there's another relationship that sprouts in this book, and like it was fine, but like Bran and Rune are sitting right there. Like they're sitting right there. They already have soul ties. Like they can feel each other's emotions and shit. Like why are they not in a relationship? I'm sorry to say, but they outsold, and the other relationship just could not compete. So yeah, I just kind of can't say that I love that book, but it was a very entertaining read, and I would say that if you have access to the audiobook, you should check it out. So I gave that book 3.5 stars. I am interested in continuing this series because I did like the cast of characters. I theoretically like the magic system. I'm not 100% in love with like the world building and all that, but I do think that it's an interesting concept, very different from a lot of fantasy that I read before. So like an interesting mythology, I guess, but I don't know if it's a new favorite, but it was very entertaining, and reading it did really put me in the fantasy mood. And the next fantasy that I read was The Bone Shard Daughter. This is by Andrea Stewart, I think. We're following a number of POVs. We're following Lynn, who is the daughter of the Emperor, and she is missing some of her memories, but she needs to recover her memories so that her father will teach her Bone Shard magic. And the Bone Shard magic is what her father, the Bone Shard Emperor, uses to keep like his political power. He has lots of little constructs that are controlled by this bone magic throughout the country, and so they take care of like political legislation for him, they spy for him, they do like dock work. Like the bone shard magic is really like the backbone of their society. So Lynn needs to learn this stuff if she's going to become the next empress. However, he refuses to teach her until she gets all her memories back. So we have Lynn struggling to get her memories back and teach herself bone shard magic so that she can become the next emperor. Then we have another character named Jovis. Jovis is like a smuggler, and he is smuggling children away from the empire because the empire collects like a bone tithe from every child. And these tithes are used in like the construction of these bone shard like mechanisms that run the country, but they like drain a person's like life force when used. So people pay to get their children smuggled away from this like bone shard tithing festival. There's this other character, her name's Falu. She is in a relationship with this other girl, and they're part of like this resistance against the emperor. This was a really interesting series. Like I absolutely love the world building. I really love the idea of the magic system. Like the bone shard magic is so fucking fascinating. I love the way all these characters and their storylines tie together. This book also had like some interesting twists and turns. I like Jovis so much, and there is like a talking magical companion in this book, which I love that trope. I eat it up every single time. It was just so good, so fun. Lots of different strings to follow, lots of different stuff going on, and I really enjoyed it. So I gave this book 4 stars because I do think that in some places the pacing was a little bit off, but that's just me personally. I'm very excited to read the second book. It's called The Bone Shard Emperor, and I think it comes out in November, so yeah. Can't wait to read that this fall. And then I decided to dip back into Joe Abercrombie's First Law world. So I started by reading A Little Hatred. This is the first book in the Age of Madness trilogy, but the Age of Madness trilogy is a continuation of the First Law trilogy. So you definitely need to read both to understand what's going on, understand like the political landscape and all that kind of stuff. But basically, in this, we're following the children of the characters in the first book. So we're following this country of the Union. They're undergoing a lot of different stuff. So they're undergoing their industrial revolution. They're going through some wars in various places. There's a little bit of like political upheaval. There's like a workers' uprising happening. So there's a bunch of stuff that's happening in this one kingdom of the Union, and we are following a number of different POVs as they experience these things. This series is so interesting. I think that Joe Abercrombie, as he just builds on this series, it gets better and better. So the first Law trilogy was good, but this was fucking excellent in my opinion. It was just so great. Like, the characters, phenomenal, so memorable, so amazing. I love them. They're just so iconic. It's just so good. I really love the characters. I think Joe Abercrombie's writing is phenomenal in this. Everything that was going on in this was just amazing. I loved it so much. Also, there's this character named Leo, and when I tell you that this is about the gayest man that I have ever met, and he fucks 2 women in this book, but I just know that this man is gay. Like, I just know it deep in my soul that he is just a repressed homosexual because something about him, he's gay. Like, listen, it's true. He's going through some kind of like sexuality crisis. He does have relations with a number of women in this book, so I definitely think that he like might like women, but he definitely likes men too. Like, he definitely likes men too. He's definitely having some kind of like sexuality crisis. So yeah, that book was so good. I loved it. 5 stars, new favorite. It was fantastic. I really think that Joe Abercrombie is so great at writing grimdark fantasy where the characters are kind of fucked up people. They're engaged in all types of stuff that is just kind of like weird and horrible and morally ambiguous, but sometimes you still root for these characters. God, this series is so good. Okay, and the last book that I read was Best Served Cold. This is also by Joe Abercrombie, and this is also in his first Law world, but it is like a standalone. So we're following some people in a different country called Styria, and we're following this main character named Monza Mercado, and basically she's a mercenary, and her brother Benna, they are in charge. So basically, they become very beloved by the people because they are always winning battles and, you know, everything like that. The guy in charge, Duke Orso, he thinks that they might be plotting on his position as like the ruler of this region, so he has them killed, or so he thinks, but Monza survives, and so she is out for revenge for her and her brother. So this is just like a stereotypical revenge tale. She has like a kill list of people who are involved in and responsible for her injuries and her brother's murder, and she's gonna get revenge. I will say that this was probably my least favorite Joe Abercrombie novel, which is interesting because I feel like among his fans this is like a fan favorite, but I just have to say that I really didn't like this one. Like, I think that where Joe excels for me as a writer is that he writes really interesting characters, and for me, I feel like the characters in this were not my favorites. Like, I don't think that they were super interesting. I think that they occasionally did interesting things, but yeah, I didn't care about the revenge plot, mostly because I didn't care about Monza and her brother Benna. They were weird, and I didn't give a fuck about them. I wasn't necessarily rooting for her in her revenge quest. I didn't necessarily love any of the characters, and yes, I do think it's possible to love characters who are dark and who do like twisted things and stuff like that, to be interested in them and like compelled by their stories, but I just felt like in this one I was kind of like, So anyway, that's all of the books that I read in August. I definitely rambled on for way longer than I thought I would, but thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all in my next video. Bye, you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe, and a special thank you to all of my wonderful patrons.